Engineer Gold Mines is focused on the exploration and development of the historic high-grade Engineer Gold Mine situated 32 kilometers southwest of Ackerman, British Columbia. Engineer Gold Mines is fully permitted for surface and underground exploration with the drill program now underway. Engineer Gold Mines Limited trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol EAU. For more information, please visit us at engineergoldmines.com.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Rick Ackerman, editor of the newsletter Rick's Picks, his website rickackerman.com. Welcome back to the show, Rick.
Always a pleasure, Jim. I appreciate you inviting me on.
Rick, the markets have been held up by only 3 or 4 major stocks, and you've noticed that the Fed or whoever's manipulating the market is letting individual stocks fall to the wayside. Can you tell us about that?
Well, I think they're geniuses, really. Any idiot can see that we're about to go into full-bore lockdown here. There was a story, not factually supported as far as I know, but it was one of those agitprop stories in the Washington Post that talked about how Delta is not only more contagious, which does actually seem to be the case, but that it's more deadly, which does not. But even the fact that the usual party organs are playing that song, you know that the markets are setting up for a big fall here. If they do, even the S&Ps will have topped almost exactly the number we've talked about for months, 4413.75. We've got a couple of stocks, as you mentioned, a couple of single stocks have jumped the gun. The really obvious ones, the chimpanzees out there who respond to pandemic news in a very reflexive way. They jumped on Hilton the other day, so I guess we should be shorting Hilton again and going long Peloton.
Now, if there's that kind of attitude, what other stocks do you see dropping and others picking up again? Like you said, does that mean Pelotons are going to come back into style?
Not necessarily. I would say that the chimps only respond to the most blatant stimulus, meaning the really obvious plays like Hilton, whatever. Less so for some of the stocks that have enjoyed a pretty good play already, and I think a lot of bullish usage has been factored into, let's say, Zoom and some of the other things. So the straight internet plays, they're maybe fully adjusted to the new world.
What's going on with crude right now?
Well, Wall Street loves higher energy prices because they've hawked energy resources up to their eyeballs to create this huge illusion of, I would call it prosperity. The average American is not feeling more prosperous, although the ones that own financial assets have certainly felt that way. But, crude moves in lockstep with stocks for that reason, and when crude is down, it's been hit pretty hard for the last couple of days, although we're getting a bit of a dead cat bounce today. The market, well, this time the market is sort of, the Dow is up 170 points right now, and I guess it's sort of doing it on the strength of crude recovering mildly today. The September NYMEX contract is off just 60 cents, but it was down pretty hard the last couple of days. But again, that's one more, I would call it a divergence, really. When crude prices are coming down and the market seems to be holding up, you better believe that it's being distributed aplenty.
Are the airline stocks, which did pick up with increased air travel, are they going to be hit, the transports in general?
Absolutely. You know, you had a story out of New York today in the New York Times that I think de Blasio is not only requiring masks, but he's about to impose a vaccine certificate proof on people who want to dine indoors or go to gyms. So I think that's kind of a harbinger the extreme things that are going to happen in lockdown 2. And of course, the airlines were just starting to get moving again with all this summer traffic. The airports are such pandemonium that I've made the automobile my prime source of transportation this summer. It's so hard to fly anywhere and rent a car that I put 5,000 miles on my car in lieu of air travel. So I do think air travel, the boom is about to get lowered again on all the carriers.
What about all the tourist operators, the Disneylands, the theme parks, the other tourist destinations? They've reopened, but are they going to get closed down again?
Well, the whole purpose of this pandemic was to shut down, essentially to wreck small business. And Disney is big business, so I hesitate to say they're going to get shut down too. They'll find a way to stay open with with complicity from the quote unquote authorities, but park attendance is going to start to hurt again, and hard to say how much really, because during this interlude of peace and freedom that people have had to go out and do their thing, they've gotten somewhat adjusted. So that's a factor that will, at least for a while, argue against too much Delta variant hysteria.
All the small businesses that managed to hold on with federal aid, are they going to get another round of federal aid to stay alive if lockdowns happen again?
I think we may be on sort of on a dole forever. I'm just reading about Florida and more broadly speaking, real apartment rental properties across the U.S. and in theory, there's a whole dam that's going to break with the evictions, and the landlords supposedly have shown a little bit of forbearance up to this point.
What is it? Something like 10 million Americans could end up homeless if all the eviction notices that were sent out over the past 12 months were acted on?
Well, the number of actual evictions has sort of lagged the potential evictions that are sitting out there. I think in Florida, I don't remember the actual numbers, but I seem to recall that the number of likely evictions over the next month or so will be about 20% of the number of total evictions that could take place. So, the stimulus was not so much for the sake of the tenants, but for the landlords who have their own mortgages, and that's really where the ripples start spreading out into much larger sectors or much larger pieces of the economic system.
How can you lock down people who don't have homes to lock them down in?
Well, everybody lives somewhere. And although, if you were in San Francisco or many parts of California, particularly southern, where the weather's nicer, you'd think a lot of people do not have places to live. But I know a lot of my friends are kind of voluntarily going back into some state of lockdown, and that's especially true for my California friends.
Mm-hmm. We'll have more with Rick Ackerman right after this.
Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications, patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Rick Ackerman. Rick, are we getting into more acrimonious times with China?
I think we're in a somewhat quiescent period right now. you see China kind of reining in its tech sector, and it even extended it to the gaming business, the video games, in part. And I think for once in their lives, the Chinese are actually being honest. They look at the obsession with video games as intellectually and culturally decadent. So, but China has enforced the cutbacks broadly. The Chinese are kind of making a point and doing the right thing, really, that they don't want to be dependent on Western capital, and that's really why they're cracking down right now. And capitalism should certainly be able to survive, and the Chinese are really acting. If not, I'm not so sure I would ascribe integrity to anything that the Chinese do, but in purely economic terms, I think they're doing the right thing. They just don't want to be dependent on our capital markets, and they especially don't like the publicity associated with USA-style IPOs, which are usually a kind of manic affair. So the Chinese, in that way, are kind of heading themselves toward toward capital markets that function in the way they're supposed to.
Robinhood had an IPO. Their stock fell slightly from what they were asking for at the start. Are they a factor in the stock market, or are they just another brokerage firm that's publicly listed?
No, it's just sort of something to engage the interest of the lunatics. And, the stock opened around $40 on day one, and by the end of the day, it was trading around 36, 37. It went lower. It sank as low as 34, but I see today the lunatics have lost no trouble spiking the stock to 44. So everything that it lost in the first few days, it gained in about 6 minutes this morning. So it's just a normal kind of U.S. lunatic stock, and I hesitate to somehow connect it with valuations or anything else. It's just the market in its onanistic mode.
Well, it seems to me most stocks are not based on the value of the company. Tesla's never made a penny, and yet it's one of the world's most popular stocks. I mean, the market is certainly, it's demonstrated even to skeptics that it has no ties to the real world, certainly to things like earnings multiples and things like that. The whole idea that bull market highs occur with price earnings multiples above 30 for the major indices is just crazy. The 30, it's always rationalized by the brokerage firms and the big banks is somehow fundamentally okay that P multiples are high or low, but P multiples are really a state of mind, and sometimes that state of mind tends toward craziness. So you're right. There are no real links between these stocks and what you might parse as the real world. Well, if you're going to deal in unreality, that would fit Bitcoin and the cryptocurrencies perfectly, wouldn't it? You're betting on nothing.
Yeah, it certainly would. I've had no trouble tracking the cryptos. I just forecast them on a purely technical basis, and just FYI, they were technically a buy at 38,562 with the stop at 36,431. But I don't know how. I mean, cryptos. I guess the sort of conspiratorial argument made very nicely by Claude Mond in something he put out recently suggests that the cryptos are an attempt by the globalists to sort of move into a money system where they're not dependent on complicity from the Fed to expand the money supply. And there is a lot of, the logic there is pretty compelling. If you had people who were in, NGOs, people who were not ostensibly tied directly to the government, wanting to create their own money for who knows which projects, you could do worse than create cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin. But if you were to if you were to ask anyone why is crypto worth something, the only argument they seem to be able to give is, and they don't even give this one really, because I don't think they understand why crypto would have value, but ostensibly it's because it's scarce, and of course scarcity is not really it takes more than that to create good money. So Bitcoin, there's really nothing behind it other than the great expenditure of electrical power processing power that it took to create it. But I mentioned this before. There could be a Jim Goddard crypto, and its value would be based on how popular you are and how much people trust you. So in this case, the trust comes from the fact that the big banks are quote unquote involved, but I use those quotes simply because the big banks don't really have any skin in the game. It's not like if they make a really bad bet, someone associated with the bank will lose money. So whatever they have in crypto is just for the sake of public relations spin. But if you were to, look at the bank portfolios and say, well, what is their actual exposure in crypto? I would say you follow the dots and you'll discover their exposure is zero.
And of course, we all talk about Bitcoin, but there's at least 7,000 cryptocurrencies out there. Is this like the start of the automobile industry when there were hundreds of manufacturers, and by the time you get to modern times, there's a handful?
Well, you'll realize if you're an auto aficionado that a lot of pretty good automobiles bit the dust. They were real steel and engines and transmissions, and some of them were great old cars. Bitcoin is just nothing. So the proliferation of Bitcoin currencies owes to the fact that there are zero entry barriers. Anybody with a hole where he sits can get into cryptocurrencies, and you can brand it however you like, and that's what people are doing.
I know China does not like Bitcoin. Does it favor other cryptocurrencies?
I think it has to have some intrinsic appeal because of the extent to which, with the cryptocurrency, the government can track virtually every transaction. And, of course, China, with the help of Don't Do Evil Google, is developing a social credit system where whatever you do, your spending habits, which kind of Kleenex you buy, and everything else will be tracked, and you'll accrue points that will attest to your good citizenship. So anyway, China, I think, has to like crypto, but it's probably a little reluctant to embrace it as openly as Western economies have, simply because China, bottom line, says this whole business is it's a mania.
Also, too, with crypto, you need the internet to work, and a lot of these totalitarian regimes count on shutting down the internet at their convenience now and then to keep dissidents under control. So that would basically cut off their currency.
Yeah, and then that would be, 97% of the transactions in Bitcoin are purely speculative. It's not like anybody's going out and buying things with Bitcoin, even though, yes, Elon Musk will take Bitcoin for a Tesla, but Bitcoin has almost no use right now as purchase as a currency to buy things. So the Chinese, I don't think they feel left out right now, just to be somewhat quietly on the sidelines.
Rick, anything else we should be keeping a close eye on right now?
I would say the bonds are moderately interesting here. I keep talking about a stronger dollar, and the trend in bonds is strong, although it's easy to make the argument that it's not a trend at all. There is no market in bonds. It happens to be going up because the central authorities have willed it that way. But it's still noticed, one of the things I mentioned in a commentary I had out a couple of weeks ago is that for all of the stimulus we've had for this dollar blowout globally, the dollar has not exactly collapsed. The dollar index has bounced twice off 90 and currently sitting up around 92. So as much as we have this incipient inflation hysteria, it's not there really in terms of a collapsing dollar.
Rick, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Well, thank you, Jim. As I said, it's always a pleasure to get together with you, and I look forward to our next.
My guest has been Rick Ackerman, editor of the newsletter Rick's Picks, his website, rickackerman.com. If you have any questions for Rick or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com, our YouTube channel, Talk Digital Network. Find us on Twitter @HowStreet. We're also on Facebook. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.